Welcome to Kingdom Now, the podcast featuring faith with an edge, as we celebrate the kingdom of God within you. I'm your host, Dr. Leanne Marino, apostle, author, and theologian, and founder of Spitfire Apostolic Ministries and all the works that go along with it. I'm excited to share this program with you as we explore the ins and outs of counterculture Christianity present as you live out the kingdom of God in your everyday life. Want to learn more? Visit my website at kingdompowernow.org. And now, our program, which features a variety of formats here just for you. Interviews, teaching and preaching proclaimed everywhere from my North Carolina studio to Sanctuary and beyond. And powerful insights here for now as we turn the world upside down everywhere we go. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, happy whatever time of day it is, wherever you are, and name a country.
Are you asking me to name a country?
Yeah, name a country.
Iceland.
Oh, I don't know how to say hello in Icelandic.
Canada.
Okay. To
Can you
all
say
of our
hello in Canadian?
listeners, yes, to all our listeners in Canada and everywhere else that they speak English, we say hi. We hope that whatever time of day when you're listening, that you're having a good one. You had to pick a language I don't know.
I know,
Okay.
I don't speak Canadian either, even though my family's from there. Never learned the family language. I
I
don't have.
actually found on both sides of my family that they were Canadian before they came here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine
Yeah,
go
that
back.
was
Well, my family's an 1800s Canadian family, so,
yeah, that would be right. They were
yeah.
1800s and early
Yeah.
1900s. They were there for a while, both sides. So that was kind of interesting. Anyway,
Yeah.
and I welcome you to this edition of the Kingdom Now podcast. And I'm your host, Apostle Dr. Leanne Marino, here as the Spitfire, serving as the voice of counterculture Christianity, where we feature the theme of faith with an edge. And if you'd like to learn more about the world of counterculture Christianity, feel free to visit my website at kingdompowernow.org. I had actually wanted to do an episode like we're doing today last season. But what happened was when I put a call out for people who had been involved in cults, I found a whole lot of people responded who were not involved in cults. They might have been people who came from very traditional backgrounds or they were from more conservative church denominations, but they really had not belonged to anything that would be rightly classified as a cult. And I don't know why I didn't think of you before, but now I have. And we are going to be talking firsthand with somebody who has been involved with a cult. And my guest is Aaron Joy. He is returning. He has been on the podcast before. Aaron, please take a moment and introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, those of you who have listened to this show have already heard from me. We've done talks before on, let's see, Freemasonry, and we talked when the COVID happened.
Mhm.
We did a good talk, and we've done a few now, but it's been a while. And yeah, so this is all off the cuff because I would have chosen a better, you know, country. But I will say, so I have been a member of the cult, and I told Leanne I'm happy to answer any questions. She has given me some questions ahead of time, but I
Mhm.
just looked at them briefly. So this is really off the cuff. I don't know where we're going, but I told her and anyone who's listening, no holds bar. There's nothing I won't hold back on. There's nothing I'm not willing to say, though my experience is my own and it differs
Mhm.
from other people, but also it overlaps with other things. The only limit that I have put on this, and she knows this, is that I'm not naming specific people or
Mhm.
specific places that I interacted with while a member. There's no reason to. It's not
Right.
about them, it's about the bigger picture. And also,
Mhm.
I have actually forgotten most of their names.
Well, and I also do not want to be sued, and I certainly would not want you to be sued, so no names is fine. I'm actually glad that you pointed that out when we were talking about it because I'm like, yeah, no names is good. So, before we get started, for people who are not familiar with cult criteria, okay, Just because you were maybe in a group that was a little bit more conservative, or maybe they had a lot of rules, or maybe you just don't like what you grew up believing or that you were once part of, that does not mean that you were part of a cult. And I would recommend 2 things. Now, first of all, I did a column for Pathos called What Makes a Cult a Cult. You can view that at pathos.com/blogs/leadership on fire. And that gives, according to the original standard of cult criteria by Robert J. Lifton, who studied prisoners of war in China after the communist takeover. There is more information about that on there, but there are actually 8 points of what is called thought reform that happens to people in cults. I'm also going to recommend the YouTube video that you did, Aaron, a few months back,
Yes.
where you
Yes.
talked about maybe cult of personality versus actually being part of a cult. And you did mention some new criteria
Yeah,
as
so
well as some books that people can get.
yeah, so just to clarify, I actually took Leanne's article and I read it over a weekly podcast that I do, and then gave my own thoughts in relationship to her article. And I also did another show where I recommended a few books. And you can find this if you go on YouTube, just search for like how to recognize a cult. That's the name of the show. It's gonna be on a channel called Hinduism and Current Events that I have. This actually can be found on Spotify and BitChute and Amazon Podcasts, tons of folks, but if you just start searching for how to recognize a cult and Hinduism and Current Events, you should find my podcast. If anything, if you'll know it's it because it's podcast number 61. So if you see 61 and how to recognize a cult, tune in for an hour while I talk about Leanne's very important article. The reason I did the show is because everybody should read her article because she puts it very clearly what is a cult and what is not. And like I said in the show, a cult of personality, like we talk about around, for example, Donald Trump, is not a cult. It may sound like that, but it's not. But there could be things within that cult of personality, like under Joseph Stalin, even that are cult like. And Leanne will obviously talk more. You'll talk more on this. But this article I highly recommend to pretty much anyone get your head straight into what is a cult versus what a lot of people say is a cult and really is not. So, yeah, that's my plug for you
Exactly.
too.
Well, thank you. It is a plug, but I also wanted to make mention of the podcast that you did on YouTube simply because you did talk about additional criteria.
Yes,
And you
yes,
also did talk about it from a different angle. So, yes,
yes.
you did read my blog, but you did add your own spin. And I
Yeah.
think that is, it's not just because it's my blog, it is also because you do give additional information and you came from a different perspective.
Yeah, I'm
And
coming
I
from a
think,
perspective of
yes,
Sanatana Dharma, which is known as Hinduism, so and research into like the Hare Krishna movement and stuff to
right,
highlight some things that you didn't talk about or may not even know about or whatever. So yeah,
right.
yeah.
And so that gives another side to it. And so I think that that's very important. And we do need different perspectives on stuff. I tell people that all the time that, we really do need to not just get into the thing of, okay, this is the only voice I should listen to on this topic. It is important to diversify. So, in saying that, because you are one who has been in a cult, I was in a group that people thought was a cult, but it does not meet the criteria. I was in Pentecostal holiness for a lot of years, and it's not a cult, but people think it is now because everything's cult now to everybody. But tell us a little bit about the group that you belonged to.
Okay, so I will say the name of the group. That was Adidam. Some of you may have heard of it. It was founded by a guy who's known as Adida Samraj, Adida. Back in the 70s, he formed the group when he went by the name of Franklin Jones and later Bubba Free John. There is a lot of crap about Adida already out there. There was forums out there for ex-members, and even their own website debunks that they're a cult. It's the worst it's the worst debunking you've ever seen, which screams cult. One of the things they say is, "Well, all the ex-members who dump on Adida have mental illness." And when you make such a stupid statement like that, where, oh, 1,000 people have a mental illness and that's why they all say bad things, you're basically screaming cult. So
Mhm.
I was a member of Adidam. I will clarify, I discovered Adidam when the guru, Adida Samraj, the founder of this group, was still alive. And I just discovered it via just a devotee who lived near me. And later, I became an official dues paying, vow taking, big ceremonial thing member, but it was after he died. And I never met him. I never talked to him. I never was in his presence. Usually, you hear a
Mhm.
lot of people talk about cults, and it's all centered around a guru or one really bad
Mhm.
teacher. The teacher did this, the teacher did that. But I want to specify or clarify that that's not always the case. One of the things that marks a cult is yes, you have a bad teacher. In this case, I will say that Adidas Samraj, I actually like some of his books. There's things he did that you can read about online that I know nothing about. So I'm not going to really comment on him. But
Mhm.
what happens in these groups is you have a bad teacher, and often the bad behaviors trickle down and they trickle down and they trickle down. So you get cult behaviors among members. You don't even have to
Mhm.
have the guru involved. So I was involved with a little hub of members from a couple different states, and the cult behavior was full on, even though the guru was dead, even though the
Mhm.
guru was dead and buried over
Mhm.
like a year or so after the fact, even though we're thousands of miles away from him in the headquarters, just in this little bubble, there was a lot of cult behavior. You don't need a
Mhm.
guru to have it. And then I left the group. I was only a member for a short amount of time. And it was just
Mhm.
like, once I became a member, red flag, warning signs. And I just was like, and I'm done. And then a few years later, I tried to rejoin. And over Facebook, there was a big Facebook community they had developed because Facebook had become a thing, and so I was like, oh, let me tap back into this for whatever reason. And suddenly the cult behavior was happening again with people who I'd never met, who didn't live in this country, and who were not members when I was members. So when I was a
Mhm.
member, these people weren't involved, but yet they were still giving cult behavior. And I was
Mhm.
basically kicked off of this forum along with a few others because I did something really bad. I asked questions. So one of the key things with cults is it's not just guru based, it can be member based. And when you
Mhm.
have multiple members acting in the same stupid way and they don't even know each other, and it's 10 years apart and it's two different countries, but yet you're still getting the same behavior, super warning sign that you have a cult. And then the fact that I asked questions and others asked questions and we were immediately dumped on. I actually was told that when I talk about Adida, like I'm going to do over the next whatever, I'm making it all up just to get a date and get friends. I was literally told that on Facebook that everything I say is a lie, that I'm just a sad, lonely person who's just looking for a date. That's why I make up about a guru, because he did nothing wrong. Total gaslighting that was done to me by a person in England who I've never physically met and wasn't a member when I was a member, but yet was able
Mhm.
to gaslight me and tell me that none of it happened. That's a
Wow.
cult. That is a cult full on when your behavior spreads over time. It's not
Mhm.
like Leanne and I have talked. Like if I go to church today and I have a bunch of nasty people I don't like, and then 5 years later I go back to the church and everything is different, that's not really a cult. That's just a few nasty people. But cult
Mhm.
behavior continues over time to preserve this entity in this
Mhm.
corporate body. So that's what I got. And then finally after that, I was like, okay, now I'm done with this. Now I'm done with
Mhm.
this because I've been gaslighted and I don't like when you do that to me because I was there and you weren't. And I've been in a relationship for 8.5 years. And I was in a relationship when I was talking about this on this
Right.
internet site. So obviously it wasn't like I was looking for a date. So total screaming.
I
But I
was
just want
gonna
to,
say, you were involved when you were
yeah,
in
I've
Adidam.
been involved in Omnidom, and I've basically been not single most of the time, so it's not like
Right.
I needed a date. Maybe I needed a better person to date, but I didn't need a date. But it's
Right.
like, so that's called behavior, and I just wanna mention it's not always about a guru. That's how we tend to talk about things, but it can often be, with an organization long after the guru is not gone. Adidas has been gone, what, almost 20 years, and it's still a cult for me. So, yeah. Alright. Keep going.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So, what were you looking for in a group, and how did Adidam seem to meet what you were looking for?
Okay, so great question. I was looking for a very deep authentic, traditional spiritual experience that I felt I
Mhm.
had not found anyplace else. I had
Mhm.
gone to the church, had a great time in college, absolutely a great time. Reading John Knox because I was at this Presbyterian church. I eventually
Mhm.
found I wanted to get deeper, so I started going to mass. It was okay. I wanted to get deeper. I started going, hanging out and reading about Judaism. I was like, no, I want to get back to what's like it would be like getting back to the core. I want to get back. People talk about it maybe in Christianity. I want to get back to the religion of Jesus. I'm not going to get into that argument with you. We'll be here for days. But yeah, but I was looking for that like I want the authentic thing. And then I read the Quran. I'm like, no, I did do this. And then I found myself I was living in Japan. I was very much alone
Mhm.
and literally I was living with his family, but I didn't have many friends and kind of isolated. And I was studying Zen, but that hadn't gone well. And I'd spent a
Mhm.
summer practicing Zen. I just didn't feel like that was it. And if you trace the timeline, okay, we have Christianity to Judaism, and then
Mhm.
Buddhism, and then well, what's next? It's Hinduism, and I didn't know anything about that, but I was kind of touching on some New Age stuff, and I just came to a point where I'd realized, oh, you know what I need? I need like a spiritual guru. That's what I knew. I knew
Mhm.
I wanted that. I knew I needed a guru, like somebody to guide me. That was the place I was at because all these groups and organizations is like I wasn't getting it. And I knew in Hinduism they have a tradition of a guru teaching the student. I'm like, oh, that's it. That's what I need. And I
Mhm.
stumbled upon Adidam on the internet by just typing in guru, and he came up
Hmm.
and they had all these writings of his online, and I'm a literary guy and I'm a writer, and so immediately that was like, ooh, this guy's really cool because he writes in this what I call now gibberish way, but it's just wild spiritual stuff that really doesn't make sense from my perspective today. But at the time I was like, I've never seen anything like this. This is like Gertrude Stein meets Jack Kerouac, two favorite writers of mine. So I was like hooked, even though it didn't make any sense to me. And it didn't sound, and this is the key of why I think Adida is so popular. It didn't sound like any other gurus out there who often have more of a self-help appeal, or they're like a Deepak Chopra thing, or they
Mhm.
also are very universalist. There's a little Buddhism, a little Hinduism. They talk about Jesus and then they talk about Lord Rama and they kind of bring it all together. And I don't subscribe to that and I don't get
Mhm.
into that. So I was leery of that. But Adida uses a lot of Hindu words and a lot of Hindu stuff. It's mixed with other things like Scientology and Buddhism.
Mhm.
But you don't see that when you look at the website. And you don't see that
Mhm.
when you're reading a two-page essay versus a 300-page book. And it just
Mhm.
I was enamored by his writing, which I hear from a lot of people is how they found him was a writing that just didn't sound like your just average run of the mill show. It sounded unique. My
Mhm.
perspective today, I realized that he is inventing his own religion and he was just very smart and he knew what he was doing. But that's how it came into it. And so then I was just kind of lonely and found him online and then ended up connecting with some gurus. And it was just this combination of I'm a writer, I like something, this sounds interesting, I need something, I'm lonely, and it's just like a perfect storm. So
Mhm.
yeah.
No, and that makes sense. I actually had looked him up because I will openly admit I know a little bit about Adidam. Most of what I know is through you.
Hmm.
I know.
You're welcome.
Yes, most of it's through you. I had looked up the founder, and I was actually surprised to learn that he had a history with the Church of Scientology,
Hmm.
which I did not know. And, once again, connections that people kind of leave out when they're, you know, putting their best foot forward, I guess we could say,
Yeah.
on their websites and
And to
stuff.
clarify, what makes them Scientology is the same. The more money you pay, the closer you get to
You
some
get.
truth. He does that. It is literally
Okay.
there's variations on membership levels, and if you're not the
Hmm.
highest, well, you don't get all the truth, and then you have
Right.
to pay more.
Hmm.
Hundreds of dollars a year, and you'll get even more truth. Maybe,
Hmm.
never, someday,
Maybe.
probably
Yeah. That
never.
makes that same. So they had that same model.
Hmm.
They call it the
Total.
bridge in Scientology.
Total
So that.
total higher total
Mhm.
hierarchy. Yep, and if you pay a
Interesting.
lot, suddenly you can skip over steps and go right to the top.
Hmm.
Yeah, or if you're
Interesting.
famous, you're automatically in the top.
Hmm. So, knowing your experience, and you kind of tapped into this a little bit in what you said. So, would you say that the writing of the founder is really what draws people to it?
Yeah, I think so. I think the
Mhm.
presentation always is about how a guru is how a guru attracts people. It's always through the presentation, through one way or the other. Um,
Mhm.
I'm a writer. I connected with a writer. Adida is also an artist. I would soon find some of his art I would have shared with me, and I was blown away by it. And I've heard people
Mhm.
relate to his art. So it's definitely through something. It's all about PR and manipulation. So a few years
Mhm.
ago, Adida did a movie. It was a documentary, but it was so glossy, no controversy, and I was offered if I wanted to watch it, I could pay some money, and like, "No, I don't wanna pay money for propaganda." "Oh, no, it's not
Mhm.
propaganda." "Really? Do you mention the controversies? Do you interview people who are ex-members?" "It's propaganda." And every
Mhm.
organization does this, and that's the thing, I think, which separates a lot of cults from non-cults, as you talked about, like a church of some sort, is is cults really control their propaganda. A church group that
Mhm.
may be more conservative or whatever may not control it to quite the extent. In Adidam, there
Mhm.
used to be someone whose job it was to get on Wikipedia at least once a week and argue off or remove bad things.
Wow.
Adidam members were told when I was there, I had the email come to me, get on Amazon, Google the Adidam books, and put good reviews for all of them, even if you haven't read the book,
Mhm.
and just bomb this with five-star reviews. Even if you've never read it, just do it anyways because we got to, we can't get rid of the bad reviews, but we can lessen it. And that's a cult, versus a
Mhm.
Pentecostal church group of millions of members or I don't know, hundreds of thousands. That's the PR there. It's not the same thing. So it's definitely a
Right.
dead giveaway is when it's everything is so perfect. Also, the dead giveaway is when on your website you literally have an argument of why you're not a cult.
It's kind of
That's
a
that's
red flag.
yeah, yeah. That's a huge red flag.
Yeah. And I would also say that when you're dealing with churches, and it's like you say, the PR thing, we don't have time to be running around worrying what everybody's
No, you don't.
saying.
I
We just
yeah,
don't. I mean,
yeah,
it's like they have an entire organized body
yeah, yeah,
just to deal with this type of thing. And most churches, I mean, they might have PR, but they don't have people that, oh, let's go check the Wikipedia every day, or
yeah,
oh, let's go check
exactly,
out Amazon. People leave reviews that they leave. I mean, there isn't much that we can do about that.
exactly,
And so
exactly.
that is definitely a difference, I guess you could say, between the two. So here you are, you're part of this particular group, you're getting into the groove with it. What, if anything, did you learn while you were in it that was not part of your upfront experience?
Well, I'll tell you, it's really interesting because when I first initiated with the group, it was through a single member. And then I
Mhm.
moved and took some time off, and then I came back, and I just happened to be living near a headquarters where I think 6 members actually lived in this one building.
Mhm.
And it was a house, and they had part of it open to the public, not the public, but they would hold meetings there from people with multiple states. And so I was like, "Hey, when's your next meeting? I'd like to go." And then you go and you get to meet people, and they're like, "Hey, we'll get together for coffee. We'll talk to you." It's like if you find a Mormon on the sidewalk, "When can we come over
Mhm.
and give you the books?"
Right.
And then you say at some point, "Hey, I want to become a member." Well, it's not like, "Okay, show up tomorrow." It was a 4, 5, 6-month process, and
Mhm.
I believe the process was to weed me out, to figure out if I wasn't gonna work or if
Interesting.
yeah, and what happened was, it's a process where I had to pay hundreds of dollars. I had to write an email to the guru, even though he's dead. It would be read by his ex-wife who sits next to his shrine, and there was a whole ceremony, and I had to buy gifts. I had to do this. I had to come to meetings. I had to do a bunch of online, no, no, they were telephone at that point. Zoom wasn't a thing. Telephone classes with other people across the globe that every week for like 6 weeks, you have to do this class based on this book you're going to read. There was a lot of stuff I had to do to become a member. And then the actual membership happened over a long weekend at a retreat. There was at least, gosh, I don't know, 50 of us who gathered together, and then two
Mhm.
of us took a huge hour and a half long ceremony where we had to give flowers and we had to light incense and and read a chant, and then we became a member. And then every year you have to
Hmm.
pay money or whatever. It was a huge thing. So to go to your
Did you
question,
provide this stuff or did they provide it?
the money I provided.
No, I know well, no, I know you provided the money, but, like, the flowers and the
No,
incense, like,
they
they
had
had it.
stuff already a little
Mhm.
bit, you know. You bought a bouquet of flowers for me. Actually, it wasn't yeah, it was a bouquet where I just gave you $400 so I could be a member, which I'm supposed to pay every year, and the moment I don't pay, I'm
Wow.
not a member anymore. You don't
Mhm.
that's a cult. If you have to pay money to be in the membership, that's a cult. And what happened was, to go to your question, as soon as I became a member, I wanted to find a way to contribute. And I
Mhm.
also kind of realized, well, I'm not in this probation period. I'm going to start asking questions too. I want to know about things. I'd already had this a little bit because every so often I say something, and while I don't think it's bad, it's bad. And
Mhm.
I'd had some backlash, but I kind of let it go. But now, when I said something, and it could be something harmless, and I'll tell you in a minute an example. I said something harmless. "Oh, no, no, no. Can you come into the other room while we speak to you? Or maybe you don't want to stay at this meeting tonight. Or maybe we're not even going to invite you to this next meeting." I learned that
Mhm.
you can't speak once you're a member. And once you ask
Wow.
a question, questions are good. When I was becoming a member, "Oh, what about this? What about this? What about this?" And you get all sorts of answers. I'd either be told, or, "Oh, well, you'll learn," or, "You'll find that," or, "We'll talk about that later." But once you become a member, you don't ask questions. And
Mhm.
that's when I shut down. I was like, "No, I
Mhm.
ask questions. This is kind of what I do. That's my Achilles heel if you tell me I can't ask questions." And I'll give you an example of something that happened before. Actually, yeah, it was before I became official member, where I was kind of shut down. I had this study group over the phone. It was 6 weeks. We were studying this little 100-page biography of Adidam. So I'd have to read a little bit, and then every week we'd have like an hour or 2 hour phone call. I think there was like 8 of us doing this phone call across the
Mhm.
globe. I think there was an Indian, and there was a bunch. I know someone from Washington State, and we'd talk about the stuff and we'd go through it. And it was actually really cool. I did it a few times. Anyways, there's this picture of the great saint of the 1800s, Ramakrishna, and
Mhm.
his disciple was Vivekananda, who
Right.
totally changed religion in America. But Ramakrishna, there's a picture. Adidas says he's reincarnated of Ramakrishna, because you always want to say that you're reincarnated of somebody because that gives you status, I guess, makes you God or
Mhm.
whatever. So he says, so there's a picture in the book of Ramakrishna. I went, "Oh, that's really interesting," on the phone. He's really cool. And the person running this meeting was like, "Yeah, yeah, he's a great saint." Okay. Next page was a picture of Adida as a baby. Now, I don't have children. I never will have children. I like kids, but I honestly could give a shit about babies. They all look like to me. They're little burping little things. They're pudding people, as someone online says. I just don't care. Every baby looks alike. They're all ugly. All right. So there's a picture of Adida as a baby, and all of a sudden everyone was like, "Oh, oh, wow, oh, wow." And the person on the phone asked each of us to comment on how this photo uplifted us. We were supposed to comment on how this photo made us feel. So they got to me, because sometimes I don't think first. I said, "Well, that's an interesting photo, but I'm still thinking about the one of Ramakrishna." That grabbed me. There's only three
Mhm.
known photos of Ramakrishna, too, and I had never seen one before. That
Mhm.
grabbed me. I was immediately told, "No, Aaron, it doesn't. What do you think of the baby picture?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just don't get anything out of it." "Well, how can you not get anything out of it?" And then I had one other person on the phone started ripping on me right then and there that I shouldn't be a member of this group if I didn't feel something from this picture. So on the next phone call, I didn't even dial in. I was just like,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna be ripped on like that. If I feel something from this picture and I don't from another, should it matter? And you're telling me that I have to feel something from a photo. This is cult
Mhm.
behavior. If I get
Mhm.
into one of your churches, your church group that meets, and I said, "So what do you think about the book of Jude? Is this not the greatest book in the entire Bible?" And your friend is like, "No, not really." And I said, "Well, yes, it is. It's absolutely the greatest book. How
Mhm.
dare you say otherwise?" You'd probably kick me out of your house. And you'd all look at me like I'm bonkers. But that's the way it
Mhm.
goes here. So
Mhm.
about a week or so later, I'm at this house nearby where the members live, and they have a huge library. And I saw a book on the shelf, and I was with a 30-year member who was talking with me, and I saw this book on the shelf of Ramakrishna, his collected works, one of the books about him. And I said, "Oh my gosh, Ramakrishna." And he goes, "Yes." And I said, "We were just talking about him in this telephone chat." And this 30-year devotee goes, "Yes." And I said, "Have you read this book? Because I'm kind of interested in him." And the guy says to me, "No, why would I read it?" And I said, "Well, Adida is the reincarnation of Ramakrishna." He goes, "Yes, well, Adida has read it for me and will tell me if I need to read it or not. And he doesn't tell us that we need to read it, so I have no interest in it." And I said, "Well, I'd be interested in reading it." And he goes, "No, you're not. Why would you want to read that? Adida didn't write it." I'm just like, "Excuse me?" So I was
Okay.
shut down for not liking a photo, and now I'm shut down because I simply am interested in a book because the guru didn't
Hmm.
write it, and the guru didn't tell anyone else to read it, so why would you read a book?
Okay, but if the guru was the reincarnation of the guy,
Wouldn't you want exactly. That's called intellectual thought.
technically though, didn't he write it? I mean,
Well, yes,
going
but
by
also, wouldn't you wanna read the book about the reincarnation? Or
right, the
wouldn't
revelation.
wouldn't you wanna read
Hmm.
that? Isn't that, yeah, as you just said, that's part of the revelation of this current guru 100 years ago, but also, wouldn't you want to? But that's called asking a question. That's called
Hmm.
questioning something, but you're not to do that. And I hate that so many
Interesting.
times once I became a member where I'd be like, "But," and eventually I was not invited to meetings. I literally
Hmm.
was not invited. They happened and I found out afterwards. And then I just went, "I'm done." Because if you're
Hmm.
telling me what I can and cannot read and you're saying, "Well, don't think about something because the guru doesn't want you to think about it," it's a cult. And I knew
Hmm.
it was a cult because I read it was a cult online, but I'm getting that behavior from members. And I'm just
Right.
like, "Wow, you're literally telling me not to read a book." And I read 5 books at once. So anyone who says to me,
Hmm.
"Don't read a book," you just need to go away.
Yeah.
You're literally on my shit list. The things I read is all over the place, and I read everything. And I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, when you start telling me not to read something, uh-uh. You're literally just. And later, I would actually go to the Ramakrishna Vivekananda temple and have a really wonderful year. After I left
Hmm.
Adidam, I would spend a year there, like 3, 4 nights a week doing meditation. And that was wonderful because that's an authentic tradition and it's not a cult. And I was
Hmm.
able to really purge a lot of frustrations and get back on a good path. So maybe Ramakrishna was saying, "Hey, come join my side."
And they
So
were afraid of that.
yeah, everything's a threat when you're in a cult. Everything's a threat.
Right.
Every question, every conversation, anything that makes you think, like you just said, "Well, wouldn't you want to read that?" "Oh, well, well,
Hmm.
well," always a threat. That's all. That's how cults run. They're very super, super protective.
Hmm. Right. Now, this may be an odd question, or maybe not. You're probably going to say it's a thinking question, so we're going to go with that.
Okay.
I have seen different examples of tests for Buddhist incarnations.
Yes.
Where, like, for example, somebody is supposedly the incarnation of someone and they stand there and they have to pick an object
Yes.
that was connected to the person and they don't tell them what it is or there was some kind of criteria. So this guy is saying he's the incarnation of somebody else. Was
Yes.
there some sort of test that he had to
Okay.
pass in order to say that?
So that's actually a great question. So in traditional Hinduism, and I'm going to clarify right now, and even though a lot of your listeners may not be so much interested, the Hinduism that exists currently in India under like Prime Minister Modi, practiced around the world, is often called by many of us Neo Hinduism because it is actually not the 2,000, 3,000 year old tradition. It's really only about 300 years old, and it
Hmm.
comes out of the Universalist Church of England. It's actually very new. So there is the old, what we
Hmm.
call Vedic religion, which goes by the name of
Hmm.
Sanatana Dharma, and then there's new Neo Hinduism. They can be very different.
Okay.
So in the old Vedic tradition, if you pre Jesus, pre Buddha,
Hmm.
if you go back to India when it was known as Bharat, and there's like no civilization at all, and I have read literature from that time. Yes, if you say I am the incarnation of somebody, you're going to have to prove it. Now, you
Hmm.
could prove it by a miracle. You could prove it because people recognize you as that. You could prove it by living your life. There are things in scripture which show what a guru is supposed to be like. A guru has, is calm, they're collect, they're not argumentative, they're whatever. There's all these things. And if you said, I am the incarnation of whatever person, doesn't matter, and I fit all the descriptions of a guru as found in the Upanishads, as found in
Mm-hmm.
the Srimad Bhagavatam, then yes, people would probably say, okay, you fit the qualifications, you say that you're God, we're going to go with it. We're going to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, in India, lots of people were claimed to be gods. Lots of people were
Right.
claimed to be incarnations, but they would fit this regimen. I was actually just reading today a story about one of these beings who came back in the 1800s, and he was supposed to be God on Earth. And he's going through all the rituals because he actually says, yes, I'm God in person. I'm Lord Krishna reincarnated, but that doesn't make me immune from any of the rituals. I still have to do everything. I still have to
Mm-hmm.
be a vegetarian. I still don't eat. I still don't drink alcohol. I still have to do this, just like I've told you to do. Nobody is immune. Nowadays, you get a lot of fake gurus that go, well, I'm so enlightened, I don't have to do any of this stuff, which means that they're actually
Mm-hmm.
above God. It's so today in a New Age neo Hinduism world, none of that stuff, all these regulations of what makes a good guru have been thrown out the window. As I just said, you have so many gurus. Adidam was one of them. Hey, I'm enlightened. I don't have to be a vegetarian, even though I tell you to because you're stupid and you're not there yet. But I can do whatever I want. I can do whatever I
Wow.
want. So many gurus in the New Age world, I can do whatever I want because I'm enlightened.
Yeah.
Yet the old scriptures clearly say God is not immune. So if God has to follow the rituals, then you, as the guru, if you're immune, yeah, no, that doesn't work. You can't be bigger than
Mm-hmm.
God. But
Mm-hmm.
these gurus today, they don't ever practice the scriptures and they don't teach the scriptures. They don't even tell people to read the scriptures. Like I said, Adida told nobody anywhere to read this Ramakrishna book, so nobody did. Because if you read
Mm-hmm.
the Ramakrishna book, you'd probably find a lot of stuff being said by Ramakrishna that would debunk Adida immediately as a legitimate guru. But
Interesting.
none of these teachers teach. They just at surface level. I'm not going to get into
Mm-hmm.
names and who's who, but a lot of them just ignore the scriptures completely because one, they probably haven't read them, and two, if they did,
Mm-hmm.
they would be debunked. So
Mm-hmm.
today, to answer your question in a long way, no, we no longer have a way to verify what someone says. I can simply tell
Mm-hmm.
you right now that I've been saving up for this podcast to reveal to you that I am Jesus Christ incarnate, and you got to go with it. And then you say, and then I'll say to you, and the scriptures which say otherwise, well, this is I'm above those scriptures, so you don't know
Mm-hmm.
that they don't apply to me. So Adida actually said that he is God incarnate. He is greater than Buddha. He is greater than Jesus. He is greater than everybody on earth. How did he get
Wow.
away with saying that? Because he said he created a thing of levels of enlightenment, real levels of realization, and there traditionally was six of them, and Buddha and Jesus were six-stage enlightened folks. Well,
Mm-hmm.
Adida declared that he's the first seventh stage realizer. So now there's seven
Hmm.
stages. He has revealed this to the world, and he is the first and only seventh stage realizer, thus making him
Wow.
better than all the other people ever on earth after all these years. That's how he got
Right.
away with it, and everyone
Mm-hmm.
went, wow. And you can't debunk him and say, well, I don't think you
Right.
are, because always to go is, well, what stage are you? You're not a seventh stage, therefore you can't debunk me. So that's
Right.
how we prove a guru today. They create a new
Mm-hmm.
religious tradition, and you can't debunk it because you're just a one stage. You're just on one.
Right. Because
Yeah.
no one's been part of it before. So it's like there's no criteria. It's like you're going to say no, well, we don't have anything to compare it to.
And the criteria is in the books that that you're teaching
Right.
people literally not to read because you have transcended the Upanishads. So there's no reason to read the Upanishads. If you did, it would all be debunked and thrown in the garbage immediately. So we just transcend them. So
Mm.
no, there is no test. It's a great question, and there's no test, and anyone can be whatever they want in the world of spirituality.
Wow. In short, yeah.
In short, yeah.
So you very much had an experience here.
Yeah, so I actually have wanted to save up and declare to the world in this podcast that I'm actually an eighth stage realizer. I've transcended even Adida. So there you go.
Oh, okay.
And you can't question it because I don't think you are. See.
Oh, okay.
That's how these things work. Yeah.
I'll try to pick up the pieces and go on with my
Yeah,
life.
you should really get going. Yeah. Got a long way to go.
Yeah.
Got a long way to go.
Okay. You weren't in very long, but do you have any
No.
memories of involvement that were anything good, or do you have anything
Oh,
positive to
yes.
say?
Oh, Adidam's first books are really great back when he was
Mhm,
known as Bubba Free-John and Franklin Jones. They
mhm,
are a young man who had gone to India, who had studied under a couple teachers, Rudy Swami and Muktananda Swami, and had gained a lot from them. Basic traditional spiritual values.
mhm,
Then he decided to become a teacher, so much so that one of his Swamis disowned him because he's like, no, I didn't tell you to become a teacher. That's not what I said. And then Adida was just like, screw you. And in the beginning, he was really good, but then he became a huge egomaniac and everything changed. And he declared in whatever year that he was God. In the beginning, he didn't do that. He was just another spiritual teacher. Once he declared he was God, that was it for me. It's over. But the
mhm,
early books are I still enjoy. I have one on my shelf. It's actually one of the few I have left of him, and it's called The Eating Gorilla Comes in Peace. It's from 1973 or 74. You can only find it on like Amazon or eBay. It's completely out of print, and they won't reprint it. It is on raw and vegan and vegetarian food and
mhm.
eating. In 1974, nobody was advocating raw food diets.
Right.
That's not something that really became popular until the 80s, and this book advocates it and actually advocates dieting of a holistic spiritual nature. So it's
Mhm,
dieting isn't just the food you put in, it's the life you lead. It's an amazing 300-page book that I won't part with for anything because
mhm,
it's just so good. Because who talks about dieting in terms of your religion? Or
mhm,
your sexual or your sexuality or your relationships or whatever. We don't. So that's awesome. As for personal experiences I had when I first discovered Adida, it was through a devotee who was like 20 minutes from me, and he was kind of lonely at the time, and we used to get together once a week and we'd talk about Adida, and he shared a lot of books with me, and that was really nice. I did a retreat where I said 50 of us from all over. I didn't even really know anyone there from many states came together in this big old farmhouse, and we had vegetarian food and like 2 whole days of just Adidas teaching and lectures and stories. That was really cool to interact with folks. And the ceremony was really cool.
mhm,
But I realize now, looking back on the gatherings I had with members, it was all very kind of stressful and tense. And I just
mhm,
remember always sitting in members, kind of watching my words. And I
mhm,
bet others were doing that too, but they'll
mhm,
never confess that because a lot of the folks I hung out with seemed to be all kind of lonely. And
mhm,
like literally everyone I met in this group was just really lonely.
mhm.
And
That's
they were
true.
out of work and they weren't doing anything. And it was really interesting as I look
Mhm,
back on it. So I really don't have that many great memories, just a
mhm,
few.
mhm. No,
Yeah, it's just
yeah.
Drek.
Well, I mean, I ask because one of the things I often tell people is that no experiences that we have are all good or all bad.
Well, that's true, and I would
Yeah.
also say I'm glad I had this because it got me to other experiences.
Mhm.
So I don't
Right.
regret it.
Mhm.
I don't regret it,
Mhm.
but a lot of it was,
I mean,
I
obviously, it was not a group on the up and up, and so you're not gonna have tons of good memories, but,
yeah, yeah.
it's a perspective thing.
We'd get a gathering at the house of 8 of us
Mhm.
or 9, maybe 7 or 8 of us, and that's it. That's all you're gonna get. There's not gonna be more because there's just nobody else here.
Mhm.
Here, I'm up here in Maine, if anyone is curious. I'm up here in Portland, Maine, and I know for a fact there is 3 devotees in the entire state.
Wow.
None of them live in Portland.
Mhm.
One's like 2 hours away, I believe. Another one's like an hour and a half. I've met
Mhm.
2 of them actually.
Mm,
But yeah, there's only 3 in the entire state. So do you think anything happens in this state related to Adida?
probably
None.
not.
No, nothing. No
Mhm.
meetings, no nothing. Maybe once in a while in the past they attempted to have a gathering at their house, but
Mhm.
yeah. So
Right.
it is, yeah, like you said, a group on
Mhm.
the up and up. It's not like
Right.
you're going to a gathering of Joel Osteen followers or
Mhm.
whoever, and there's 1,000 people in the room. Yeah.
Right. Right.
This has
What's
there's only like 1,800 to 2,000 members total in Adidam who are
okay?
dues paying members, and there's
Okay.
never been more than that,
That I
and
was
that's
going to
worldwide.
ask. Okay, that was my next question.
Yeah,
So
when I
good,
was a
good
member,
deal.
I had a list of all the members in the world. We had an
Hmm.
email server that we all got on, and there was a list, and I pulled that list up and I put it in my Excel spreadsheet, and there was only 1,800 people.
Okay.
I was told that there was more, and there's tons of people, but no, that's it, and that's all there really ever has been,
Hmm.
and that's worldwide. But yet, I have to tell you, Adidam is the future religion, and all the world will bow to Adida at some point. He's dead. He's been dead for almost 20 years. He founded the religion in the 1970s. There's only 1,800 people worldwide, but
Hmm.
just trust me, according to them, any
Hmm.
day now, the whole world is going to convert.
Right.
Any day now. You may need an I don't know what calendar they use.
Well, but that also has a very Scientology feel because
Yes.
even though they don't release their lists of members, the membership list is actually only considered to be, in the maybe the double digit thousands. So maybe,
Yes, yes.
25,000, but they're going to take over the whole world. And
Well, yes,
yeah,
any day now.
any day
Yes.
now. So,
Them and the spaghetti people who worship
oh,
the
the
spaghetti
flying, yeah,
monster.
the
Any
flying
day
monk.
now, everyone's gonna bow down to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
And that's actually another thing with cults too, that's
Mhm,
on the list and the website, on the article that you wrote and on the YouTube, is this sort of future talk of, well, any day the
mhm.
world's gonna that
Right.
is very much a cult thing. And
Mhm,
we should mention, yes, in Christianity you do have like, oh, end times or Jesus is coming. It's really not, I don't think it's necessarily the same. In the cult though, any day the world will be converting to this religion, Adidam, whatever it
mhm,
is. The difference is, until they do, you kind of have to be on the defense.
mhm,
You don't, you want people joining, but you really don't want people joining. Like I said, it was a 3 to 4 month thing that it took for me to become a member. So we
mhm,
want people in, but yet we don't. We want to weed out people who are not good, but yet any day now the entire world is going to convert.
hmm.
Really?
Right.
That doesn't, I mean, I don't think churches have that necessarily where they're
Mm-mm.
like, oh no, you can't come to our church this weekend,
Mhm,
you know, because any day Jesus is going to take over, he's going to come back, but don't come to the church. So the cults are always on the defense. They
mhm.
have to be on the defense because, as you laughed, there's only 1,800 members, but any day they're going to take over.
Right. Right. There's gonna
Yeah.
be this whole thing
You
that's gonna
have to be
happen.
on the defense so you don't have people coming in asking the question of, are you sure about that? Oh, that's right. The guru said it and you can't question anything he said.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
Did you find leaving difficult?
Oh, it's always difficult.
Mm,
For me, when I finally decided, it took a couple months before I said, I am done. And then there was few emails that went back and forth arguing. The hard part is often, for me, it was very easy to leave. But the part that gets most people who are in cults is not necessarily the leaving. It can be if you're like in Jehovah's Witness or Mormons and your whole
mhm.
family's in it, and you're going to be banished.
Right.
That can take a long time. I didn't wasn't losing my job. I wasn't losing anything.
Mhm.
So for me, it was easy. The problem was immediately afterwards, you always regret it. You
Mhm.
always go, "Oh shit, I've ruined my life." I swear in the month or so after I left, I had so much bad luck. Like everything fell apart. I'm like, "Oh
Mhm.
shit, this happened. Oh shit, this happened." And I was like, "Oh no, I'm being punished. I need to go back to the group."
Mhm.
There is always a sense of regret, particularly if you've been used to doing study groups and you're studying the guru stuff and suddenly you're not doing that. Life changes. Like if you went to prison, life changes. It's that
Mhm.
same sense of suddenly life is over. And suddenly everything's changed. So you have the sense of regret. And that actually I never really got rid of. A few years later, yeah, a few years later, I was having some rough times. And then I was like, well, maybe things have changed. My life has changed. Let me get online. And there's a Facebook thing. There's not going to be anyone here in Maine because there's only three of them, but I could get on Facebook,
Mhm.
and then you literally have someone, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, telling me that everything I'm saying is just to get a date. So literally the last 50 minutes have been me just trying to get a date. What, by someone who wasn't even involved. And then you're like, no, this behavior's still here. And then that was the cut, seeing it again. But honestly, you see this so many times. People who are in cults, they want to go back because it is comfortable. And yes,
Mhm.
it sucks, but they want to go back. And so that was my thing. And then finally I was able to cut it after this thing. But a lot of people do return. There is a high rate of returning folks. It's shocking why you would return to something that isn't good, but yeah, it's not abnormal when you think of human nature and a desire to be comfortable, a desire to, if I humble myself, then I can get my shit back together because my life
Mhm.
seems to not be going well. But so that was my thing. You know, that's my
Mhm.
experience there. So yeah.
Mhm. Interesting. So you did think about returning, maybe not like you wanted to walk in the door and throw yourself on.
I was sort of lucky because I left, and I left the organization, and then I hooked up with another organization which was really good. Ironically, that other organization was a dying temple with a swami who was so old he actually couldn't hear and his English was really bad. Today the temple has an awesome swami, and I just was there in a wrong time, wrong place, but
Mhm.
it was a place to go. But I probably could have gone back to Adida, and I remember getting an email, "Oh, we're gonna have our retreat again this year, and for, $200." And I might have been welcome back. And then when I saw the retreat was gonna be led by the same person doing the same talk on the same theme, and I'm
Mhm.
like, "Are you kidding me? Does he do the same talk every single year?" "Yes, he does." I'm like, "Yeah, no." I probably could have humbled myself and gone back, and I'll tell you why in a second. But I actually have moved, and that was one thing, is I moved here to Maine where there was no members, and so that firmly cut it off. And
Mhm.
even though I know two of the people here, I had met them at the retreat. Matter of fact, I being in a place where there's no devotees means I was permanently cut off. But
Mhm.
had I stayed where I was, yeah, maybe I might have wanted to return at some point.
Do you ever miss what you found in the group?
No,
No.
I got rid of all the books except for one, and the book there is the only one I like,
Mhm.
and so I have all I need.
You
No,
know,
that's not true. I have a book of his art, which I really like. It's on the shelf. It's not
Mhm.
going anywhere either. Though I was reading one of this eating gorilla comes in off food recently, and I was reading one part, and I was like, "Oh, you're kidding me? Are you kidding me? This is what you've written? Are you kidding me?" It's just like, "Oh my gosh." I was like, "Okay, well, I'll keep the book." And I almost thought about getting rid of the book. Actually, I got rid of one of his books it was all essays, and I was going through the essays going, "Oh, I'll keep this essay," and I would rip it out. And eventually I had half the book ripped out, and I was going to get rid of the rest of it. And then I'm looking at these essays going, "Oh, okay, I'll keep these." And I started reading them going, "Yep, no, that's all right. Thank you very much. I have other things to read with my life." And I just threw out the whole thing.
Mhm.
So no, I've actually purged everything. I don't mind talking about it now. It's been so long, and yeah, no, it's
Mhm.
just I've also learned of the authentic tradition of Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism. I'm
Mhm.
reading the scriptures. I'm into other things, and so when I see someone like him, he's just a new age guy for me, and I don't have any interest in that. I have
Mhm.
purged all of that from my life. I have been heavily into that, but it's all purged now. And no, I don't miss it. I only have so
Mhm.
much time in the day too, so I don't have time to focus on it.
That's fair. That's definitely
That's fair.
fair.
That's what it comes down to sometimes. I just don't have time to worry about the rest of it anyway. So no, I don't care.
Mhm.
No.
Ultimately, you had said, you kind of led you on a certain way and you developed other things, obviously, as a
Yeah.
result from leaving. So, how did leaving the cult benefit your life?
Well, okay, I'll back up. Actually, joining a cult is always about benefiting your life. No one ever
Mhm.
joins a cult for anything but it's going to bring you benefit. And I was in a shitty position where I was living, just across the board, you name it. It was not good. So I thought joining the cult would make life better. Not that it
Mhm.
promised that life would be better. Nobody in Adidam ever said to me, "Hey, if you join this,"
Mhm.
but my thought was, "Hey, maybe if I join this cult, I will meet somebody who can get me a good job." You
Mhm.
know, I can meet people. I can do stuff which I can't do right now. That's what I felt going into it, that the world was going to be open like an oyster.
Mhm.
And so it was all about getting stuff. In turn, I've spent hundreds of dollars and I'm dumped on and mentally put through the ringer. And then I leave. And when I immediately left, as I said, I didn't feel that life was beneficial. I thought I had messed up
for months afterwards, I really felt depressed because
Mhm.
I actually at one point I said to a friend, I just got rid of the best thing in my life. Oh my
Mhm.
God. Oh my God. It's like losing a relative or losing something. I just was like, that's it. My life is over.
Mhm.
But down the road, now it's beneficial. There it was, but it my life has benefited because all these steps, you learn new things, you learn new insight. I am very rigidly anti new age stuff, anti
Mhm.
universalism, religious universalism now, but I don't think I would be if I didn't have that experience with the cult. I
Mhm.
don't think I would be. I wouldn't be so critical or willing to go, no, I'm just not interested in that. And you can call me any name you want, but I'm just not interested in going
Mhm.
there because of my experience. I'm also much, I hate to say I'm critical because I'm not that critical, but there's just some things I just no longer want to waste my time with
Mhm.
because of the cult. I actually think I ask more questions now because of the cult. Because when I didn't ask questions, when I was involved, I always had an itching in the back of my head, something going, yes, but. And then when I did ask questions, I was dumped on. So
Mhm.
now I actually tell people all the time, ask questions. Ask questions. That's if you get on my YouTube, Hindu scriptures and current events, you will see one of the number one themes for me is I always say at the end of the day, ask questions. Because when you
Mhm.
can't ask questions, you're not in a good space.
Mhm.
And this goes for everything. It goes for life in general, government,
Mhm.
co-work, whatever. When you have people who do not want you to ask questions, and the moment you're shut down, things aren't good. And questions help us grow. Questions help us discover. Questions give us the desire to learn more and to research and to investigate. So I think I ask way more questions now than I ever did before, which means I probably open my mouth up and say really atrocious things every so often in the view of some people because I'm willing to say, yeah, but wait a minute, what about and I don't really care how you feel about me,
Mhm.
but I'm asking a question to try to, you know, try to get there. So that probably is the I guess that's a benefit. I
I
guess
think
so.
so.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
probably a benefit.
so.
But
Um,
definitely having the experience means I'm more rigid to not accepting things. People tell me, "Oh, I'm this," and I had a friend of mine a few years ago. "Oh, I'm really into this online teacher," and this online teacher, I won't name her. She's in another country. She's a YouTube guru, and she declared that Donald Trump was going to win 2020 because thousands of angels or whatever had told her this, and it was a fact. And if he won, he was then going to fight the Illuminati, and society would be safe for like 10,000 years. But if he lost
yay.
2020, yeah, 10, 1,000 angels told her this, Leanne. Do you have 1,000 angels talking to you? See, you
No.
don't know these things. So then, see, so you're not
Well,
special
but
like
I'm
her.
not level 7. So.
Yeah, she's probably a 9. So then she said, if he loses, we will immediately be enveloped in darkness and the Illuminati will take over the world. So the election passed. He is no longer our sitting president. So she declared, oh, well, God didn't tell the angels the truth because God believes sometimes keeping secrets. So the angels all thought that Trump would win. But it's okay because God revealed to us that he wouldn't win, but we're not going to be taken over by the Illuminati. That's what this guru, because I looked her up when my friend's telling me about her. And I'm like, oh yeah, no. And he was all about her, like, oh, you should listen to someone. So I got a book by her if you want. And immediately I started looking into this woman going, no. I
Mhm.
almost don't even care about the friendship because if you're pushing her, no, she's not good for anybody, including you.
Mhm.
You know, so I'm a little more intolerant of things now,
Yeah.
and I think I called him out. He had some other issues. I actually said, you know, your guru is not healthy,
Mhm.
and he realized that, and then went on to another one who is just as not healthy.
Unhealthy. Yeah.
Yes. Also, this guru I should mention has reinvented the whole thing now uses puppets, and all the past is forgotten because that's how these gurus work, and they bring a cult around them of people who are just sad and lonely. And ironically, my friend was sad and lonely and in dire straits. And yeah, I guess that's probably a thing. If you look at a cult and you look at all the people around you, how many of them actually have jobs,
Mm-hmm.
relationships, are happy? Because yeah, when you go to church, if you look around the congregation, how many of them have jobs? Probably far more than those involved in a cult.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
okay.
But the only thing I kept thinking of when you're describing that with the puppets is you're not on TikTok, but there's this one who does food commentary, and she goes, "Everybody's so creative," and that was just what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
no, yeah, no. I'm on TikTok. I can't stand that. That's horrible.
No, I was
I'm
gonna say I know
sorry.
that you're not on TikTok, but anyway,
I
so
it rots my brain cells. I have a friend who posts. I used to have a friend who posts crappy Trumpster stuff, and he would send me this, and he protests in town, and he'll put up videos of the protests, and I would watch him. I'm like, oh my god, I just lost a brain cell. Oh, I can't stand that.
okay.
But
First of all, brain cells
you're on
rotting
it.
on
I don't.
TikTok is fair. That is a
I don't.
fair thing.
Pff, I can't. I'm not on X, Twitter either for the same reason. I
Mhm.
just can't. I can't do it. I'm too old. This is where I declare I'm too old. Too
Well,
old for this
I
stuff.
I I I post on Twitter, but I don't. I have never commented on anything, and
Yeah,
I'll
I
post
can't.
on TikTok. I don't really do a whole lot on there, but the
I know
rotting your
it's.
brain thing, that is fair. That some of the
Yeah,
stuff
no.
you
I just
pointed is
I
fair.
can't do it. I can't do it.
So everybody who's listening who follows TikTok, they'll get the everybody's so creative reference. But anyway, okay.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
no. This is someone else. No,
yes.
no.
So what would you say to somebody who's considering a cult?
So I would say make sure it's a cult. As we said at the beginning of the show,
Very
not
natural.
everything is a cult just because you say it's a cult.
Hmm.
I was in a I don't know, was it on your post or was it somebody it was somebody else's post originally on Facebook. Someone had mentioned, well, a cult is any group that asks for money. That's literally what this person said on the forum. Cult is any group that asks for money. So I said, well, okay, I belong to a religious group that asked me for a $300 membership fee. I got it. Also, there's this building down the street from me. It's called Burger King. They keep asking for my money. So I get, are they a cult? And the guy was like, well, if you ask for money and you tell people what to think and you don't want them to leave, that's a cult. Those three things make a cult. And I literally said, well, Burger King keeps asking for my money. And then they say, do you want the large? Do you want the drink? Do you want any more? They keep asking for
Hmm.
more and more money. Two, they keep telling me how great their food is. I see the commercials. Their food is the best. It's better than any other food. And three, I'm there and they keep wanting me to stay. They don't want me to go or buy any place else. So I guess Burger King is a cult. I mean, obviously, actually, my law firm that I work for, we keep asking you for money and we keep billing you and wanting you to pay and telling you we're great. So we must be a cult.
Hmm.
So make sure what you have is a cult.
Right.
Don't listen to people like, well, if they ask for money, they're a cult. No, that's just someone who's ignorant and they know nothing about cults. As you mentioned at the beginning, some Christian churches are maybe very conservative. They may feel like a cult, but they're really not. As I said, you could probably go to
Hmm.
the church in 5 years from now and it's completely different. Therefore, it's
Right.
not a cult.
Right.
Cults of personality around Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not a cult in any way, shape, or form. Okay. I saw someone online. He said to me, and this one drove me crazy. He said, and this was someone I called a friend, and I just like, God, I can't talk to you anymore. He said, any group that does not follow God's authentic scripture is a cult. Now, he is a Hindu from India. Therefore, God's authentic scripture are the Hindu scriptures. So anyone who's Hindu is not a cult. The Bible, I guess, is not God's scripture. So
Hmm.
you are a cult. You're a cult because you're a Christian. Muslims are cult. Buddhists are cult. Everyone else is cult. But I basically wanted to say, how do we know what scripture is God's scripture? And he goes, because God tells us. Okay. 100% of cults in the world have scriptures. And in 100% of these cults, God has said that's their book. God gave us the Book of Mormon, right? Didn't he give us the Christian Science textbook? Didn't he give us the whatever? He gives us all. Didn't he give David Koresh something? Funny how God works. So when you get an answer like that, well, or that book I hate, Kingdom of the Cults,
Hmm.
which it
Walter
basically
Mears.
says, yeah,
Hmm.
which basically says if you don't believe in Jesus and you're not what mainstream Pentecostal or mainstream Christian, you're a cult. Well, sometimes that might be okay, David Koresh, But another times it's like, well, yeah, so basically you don't believe in Jesus, you're a cult. Therefore, all Buddhists are cults?
Mhm.
No, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go into a cult, learn what a cult is. That is the number one thing you should do considering joining an organization. Find out if what you're joining is really a cult.
Mhm.
Secondly, and I've harped on this for a while because I think it is so super important. And Leanne mentioned at the beginning of the show, her essay, find that it has 8 points listed there of what is a cult. Since then, there has been a lot of other studies. The
Mhm.
Moonies, the Hare Krishnas, in the
Mhm.
70s, those groups spurned a whole world of cult study. Sometimes the lists have 15 points, but they don't have one, they don't have three. You got to have eight. This is from 1951. This list we're talking about of 8 points. It is authoritative. Find that list, hold it up to the group that you're interested in joining. That's the first thing. It's just so important. Otherwise, you're just spouting ignorance, or you think Burger King is a cult. Okay, when we all know it's actually McDonald's. See,
Oh, I was gonna say Walmart.
oh, yeah, that is a cult. Anyways, but the other thing is, if you're going to join, you live in the world of the internet, so do your research.
Mhm. Hey, that's
Everything is on the
fair.
internet. And when I was young, I didn't have the internet. I didn't get this stuff. I didn't know any of these things. So there was no way to research. But now everything is out there. And I would say if you are interested in joining a group, read their books. Don't wait till you get in to read the books. Read the books beforehand. There is a book on Adidam critiquing Adidam. It's not really a good book. Buy that book. Buy books. Buy Adidam. Research. I would
Mhm.
say do your research because sometimes you can just tell just by reading a book whether you're going to like someone or not. But if you wait and then you get in, that's what I would say. If you're interested, investigate. Investigate like your life depends upon it
Mhm.
because your life depends upon it. And
Yeah.
I'm not jesting. I'm not saying, oh, well, whatever. I'm saying do that. And if you don't want to investigate, and this is going to sound harsh, if you don't want to investigate, you're being lazy intellectually. And thus, you are more open to brainwashing. They
Mhm.
want you because you're not willing to ask questions. You're exactly the type of person a cult wants because you're not willing to ask questions. Ask questions right up front. Find a forum. God, they're all over the place. When I need to fix my computer, I jump on the internet and look for forums.
Mhm.
I don't get on, I just read them. I would just say research, do your research, investigate. If you still want to join, great. I'm never going to stop someone from doing what they feel called to do. But I would also say if you want to join, think about why you want to join. Are you joining because you're lonely, because you're sad, because you're out of work, because you think, like I did, that life is going to be awesome? Because I'm going to tell you right now, no. Wait, not even close to no. Just
Mhm.
not. You may meet people who are really cool. I'm not going to say you're not going to. You may have some cool experiences, but life isn't suddenly going to become amazing. You see these people who are involved in culture and like, well, ever since I was here, oh my God, my life has just been amazing. Well, that's probably because you dumped your relatives, you have no place to live, you have no job, and you have nothing, and that
Mhm.
you have nothing outside the cult. People who are in Adidam, who are living on the island in Fiji where Adida is buried, none of them can leave because they don't have any jobs. There's no money on the island. It's a very small island where Adida encamped during the last few decades of his life, and there's a whole community on this island. In order to leave, you need a boat to take you, what, 2 hours? Then you got to fly from Fiji to America. You're going to land in America with no money to your name. You haven't worked in America in decades, so don't expect Social Security any day or benefits or anything. And you're going to have no place to live. You can never leave. You're trapped. So I'm 99% sure that a lot of people who say, well, I love being in this cult, it's because they actually can't leave. If you're stuck in a cult
Mhm.
and you have no money, no home, no nothing, and the moment you leave, you're going to have to be sleeping on the street, quite literally sleeping on the street because you have no relatives that are talking to you. What do you got? You got nothing. There was a guy in Adidam who I knew, and he bought a property with other members. And when they all died, the property would be then given to Adidam. The Adidam would inherit it into the will. And this was how Adidam was getting this property. They were making the members buy this property and then Just give them 20, 30 years. They'll pay off the mortgage and then Adidam gets it. What a great way for Adidam to save money instead of Adidam just buying the property. Because I asked him about this. I said, "Oh, they're going to give you the money?" He goes, "Oh, no, I have to give it." The guy was retired. He cashed out his entire 401k and he goes, "Yeah, I drained my entire savings. They actually asked me if I wanted to close my account when I was at the bank to be able to put in my share to buy this property." And he's like, "Yeah, I got no money until my next Social Security check, and I'm going to be living like, church mouse for like a year or two. I have nothing." This guy had no family. He hadn't seen his grandchildren, as far as I know, ever. He hadn't seen his son or daughter or whatever in at least a decade. They didn't talk to him because they didn't agree with the cult, while his wife was in the cult.
Hmm.
So she lived with him. She gave away her money, but she still had a job. So here is a guy who's been in this cult for decades, decades, has no money to his name because he spent every penny to purchase a house, put the mortgage on a house. He's now tied into a 30-year mortgage. So if he wanted to leave, he's got no money. He would be out on the street because this is his house, but he'll be kicked out. He won't be able to live there. So he literally will be on the street with no money. He won't be able to get another apartment, doesn't have a job, just has Social Security, which is barely enough. And he'll lose his spouse. He will lose everything. And his
Mm-hmm.
kids aren't wanting him back. And if you're 65, 70 years old, you don't really want to be living on the street with nothing to your name.
Mm-hmm.
So he will be the first to tell you Adidam is one of the greatest things ever. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
because he has to. He has nothing else. He has
Mm-hmm.
to say that it's wonderful. He has to say that life is wonderful because he has no life. He's got nothing. He has
Mm-hmm.
to delude himself into loving this thing that he has now committed himself to forever because he can't leave. He physically can't leave. And I think a lot of people in cults, I would say if you want to join a cult, look at the propaganda, look at the website, look at things. If everyone is going, this is amazing, this is amazing. I've lived on this island for 30 years and it's amazing. Okay, you've lived on an island for 30 years, which means you have no social security coming to you. You have
Mm-hmm.
nothing. Of course it's amazing because you can't leave. You're trapped. You're a prisoner in a jail of your own creation,
Because
you
you don't know
know,
what else is out there.
and you can't access it. If
Right.
you literally have no money to your name because you hadn't, also, if you haven't held a job in 30 years, how do you apply for a job? When you're
Right.
70 years old, I haven't worked for 30 years because I've been living on this island with this guru. Who's going to hire you? It's hard enough to get jobs as it is.
Right.
And you don't even have any money. What are you going to do? So
Mm-hmm.
be always, I would say if you find a group and everyone is smiling, run away.
Mm-hmm.
Something is wrong. But if you find a group where people are pretty open, like, yeah, on Sundays, the cookies suck, the coffee is always burnt, I think that group's probably not so bad. But
Mm-hmm.
it's when there's no criticism that things are bad. So I would say do your research, investigate. And if you're not willing to do your research, don't even waste your time because you're going to be deluded and maybe put into situations you don't like, pour out money, you're going to lose a lot of time, energy, whatever, and there's no reason to do that, you know. So that's my very long answer to your question, but it hit a few different points.
It
So,
definitely did. So we're about at the end of this particular episode, which has had a lot of really very good information in it. And I always like when information is firsthand, where we're not necessarily going by a second and third generation experience, but one that really was lived in person in our lifetime by the individuals talking about it. What would you say to people in closing?
wow, that's the hardest question you've asked all night. Oh my gosh. I would say spirituality is a very big, wonderful, amazing thing. It can be awesome. Religion is awesome. I love religion, but you can also go down a very dark road where it will destroy your life. You'll have no money, you'll have nothing. And in that case, it's not worth it. I would say be careful to people. Seriously, be careful because religion doesn't have any. There's no cushion you can fall on. You can just get burned, and everything's, say what you want and do what you want. It's very free. I feel sometimes, and yeah, God, I think I've said everything. I would just say, yeah, just use your brain, ask questions, which is what I say I say this all the time because I just don't think people do. Always ask questions. It's one of the most important things you can always do, even if people don't like you.
Mhm.
What do they care? It doesn't matter
Right.
because it's all about you saving your bank account or saving yourself. Ask questions. And if you don't like the answer, don't think you're the problem. That's one thing cults always want to do is, oh, well, you're the problem. That is such a
Mhm.
cult behavior. If you go on Adidam, there's literally a website and it says that people who criticize Adidam, they're the problem.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because everything I've talked about hasn't been about Adida, it's been about the members. And the website doesn't talk about the members at all. It's just like, well, Adida is not a cult leader, so therefore this is not a cult. Well, I haven't talked about him. I've talked about the members. So you can still be a cult. So, but if you brought this question up, oh well, I would be the problem. I'm the problem.
Mhm.
I'm the problem. So ask questions. Yeah, figure out why you're doing it if you're doing, that's all I would say. Stuff I've always said. Use your noggin, use your common sense. And yeah, that's it.
Well, that works. Well, how can everybody get in contact with you if they'd
So
like to learn more?
I would say I have a website you can go to. It's actually books that I've written, but it has my contact. If you go to aaronjoyauthor.weebly, that's AARONJOYAUTHOR.weebly, WEEBLY.com. If you type my name in like Amazon, you're going to find me really fast.
Mhm.
Or if you just online, I deliberately have made myself very open. But also, as I said, I have a YouTube page called Hindu Scriptures and Current Events, and you'll find that on BitChute, Amazon, Alexa, see all these different podcast sites, Spotify, and Rumble. So if you type that in, you'll find it. And I always have my email on everything I do, so you can reach out to me. So yeah, that's just Google my name. You'll find me and you'll find something I'm doing. And feel free to tune into my YouTube if you want to hear a weekly talk from a Hindu point of view on religion and current events. And my YouTube, this is duplicated on all the other channels. I'm also reading the scriptures of Hinduism, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 12 volumes. Currently, I'm in book 3 of the 5-book Ramayana, the great epic of the past. I'm reading all these Hindu scriptures, the 108 Upanishads, all these books that no one wants to read for because they're too long and they're too complicated. I'm reading those so you can check those out. So yeah, that just look for me online. Easy to find me. That's it.
Well, I thank you for being on, and I'll have you back for something. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but
Someday.
yeah, you'll be back on. And I thank all of you for listening. And if you would like to have an additional resource for the things that we've been talking about here today, I am once again recommending my Pathos column, which is Leadership on Fire. And that is at pathos.com/blogs/leadership on fire. That's pathos.com/blogs/leadership on fire. You can subscribe, and then every Wednesday, when the posts are new and are released, you will get a notification about them. So definitely go check that out, sign up, and connect today for that. Also, across social media, I am actually available. Sometimes I regret that decision, but I'm there. And I would love to have a conversation with you about the things that we're talking about on this podcast, maybe something you'd like to hear. But I definitely do encourage dialogue and I love questions. I am one of these people who is like, no, ask me a question. Do sometimes I get tired of being asked the same 5 things over and over again? Yes. But ask me a question because
But you
that's
could
important.
always ask about your
You
shoes.
can always ask me about my shoes, that too. That is always available, and there are pictures of them up. But if you would like to connect on social media, TikTok, Facebook, X or Twitter or whatever the hell it's called now, WordPress, all across social media at Kingdom Power Now. You can find me. And so my handle is at Kingdom Power Now. Definitely make that connection. Would love to hear from you. Would love to start that conversation. Also, if you'd like to learn more about the world of counterculture Christianity, feel free to visit my website at kingdompowernow.org. That's kingdompowernow.org. If you are looking for seminary that is entirely modern, applicable for our times, and where you will actually use everything that you learn in it, and it is affordable and can be done from home, I encourage you to check out Apostolic University Seminary at apostolic.university.org. That's apostolic.university.org. And if you are in the Charlotte, North Carolina area and you are looking for your found family, because family means that nobody gets left behind, feel free to check out the work of Sanctuary International Fellowship Tabernacle, better known as Sanctuary at welcomeinthisplace.org. That's welcomeinthisplace.org. And if you have a question that is not answered on the website, feel free to reach out and we will be more than happy to answer whatever question you might have. And this is Apostle Dr. Leanne Marino reminding you in closing that information is power. And it really is not very informative to run around and call everything that you dislike a cult. But it is very informative and important to get the right information so that when you are confronted with such groups, you are empowered with the correct information. Until next time, be blessed. Thank you for joining us on Kingdom Now. I pray it proves to be a blessing in your life. To learn more about this work, ask a question, submit feedback or a topic suggestion, advertise on air, or donate to this work, visit my website, which contains essential information and links for other points of contact around the web at kingdompowernow.org. Also, if you are in our area and would like to visit Sanctuary International Fellowship Tabernacle SIFT, visit welcomeinthisplace.org. Until next time, this is Apostle Dr. Leanne Marino reminding you that the kingdom of God is within you, and that means the kingdom is now.